Time index on this one is 10:39 in the morning, Thursday West Coast time for the December 5th, 2024. Letter is addressed to Farron Cousins of Ring of Fire and John Laradola, I think that's his name is, for his damage report. All this seems to be damaging for my own nerves. Gentlemen, shall we talk? I missed a lot of your conversation concerning about the back and forth regarding the CEO shooting of United Healthcare. I don't suppose you guys ever been in the industry or know something about the claims when they get processed. Usually when you sign up for these kind of companies to work for, they give you these NDAs that you won't disturb trade secrets. Nothing trade secrets about the program that they used back then, back 20 years ago, or longer than that. We actually had California operations for processing of the paperwork, medical authorizations, and call center operations, dealing with both member and provider. I was working in the provider area in the call centers, dealing with the HMO and PPO claims, not to mention eligibility quotes coming from the medical establishment. Give me 1 second. I had already made my viewpoints known concerning about the shooting on my own YouTube channel, The Diary of a Griever Named John Weaver, which is where this is originating from, under the public links. And there's a lot of things people talk about the medical insurance. They're both good and bad. And I have never been on the broker end or had to push so many products down people's throats. And one of the products I never liked was the individual products because they never covered pre-existing condition. Now, being a former employee of a Blue, at least I had some coverage over that. And I had pre-existing coming into the company. So I was covered for that under an HMO, which I stuck with until the company back east bought out my Blue and then took it out. I mean, gutted it from California and everywhere else, I guess. The products that they would have, small employer group and individual products and the large employer groups. Small employer groups, they would have representatives to deal with, network supervisors and specialists. And they would also have the other ones for account holders for the larger corporations. The policies that they would sell to the larger companies would have a lot more attractive practices. Limited, but are attractive for the HMOs. And the PPO, I hated dealing with PPOs. I like dealing with the HMOs not because they were so much cheaper at that point. They got you limited, but at least you had some options, and I dealt with it. But the one thing I could not understand, and one I could not deal with, is sometimes when you see medical records coming through, trying to get things authorized for procedures. And depending on the plan that you would have, is where the authorizations were coming from in the first place. Now, normally, under the HMOs, the medical groups would be doing the authorizations for that, regardless of which plan you had. Unless, of course, there were contracts set up by different companies and different corporations. I never worked for HealthNet or United. But being subject as a patient of being United over the past few years, I switched over to a different health plan altogether, which I'm okay with for right now. Not griping or grumbling about it just yet, but no health plan is ever comfortable and workable anyway. I discovered that the hard way. Working in an industry, learning about the PPO and HMO practices, yeah. When it came down for authorizations and when you're in an HMO situation, and that's not the situations I'm hearing and understanding about the United Healthcare. United Healthcare does the EPOs, extended point policies that they have. And the PPO often, maybe they would have a healthcare account. She must be obeyed is calling. Under the healthcare savings accounts that they would have, you would have to save up to a certain dollar amount per year to use. Otherwise, you'd lose it. Say, for example, if you're under just regular preventative, it'll be okay. Going for a few checkups, maybe going for an X-ray if you need it, a bit of pharmacy, it'll be no problem, right? But when you get into a catastrophic condition, and it would take a lot longer, it eat up the savings accounts, and then you're really stuck with the bills. Even if you're in an HMO, or it can't be an HMO because they won't do HMO. They'll do the PPO. So whatever money you had saved and stocked up, gone. It's just as bad as giving a savings account for yourself outside the healthcare range. And then you have to use up the savings on that to pay for things. I suppose you guys already got that point of view a long time ago. You're dealing with your own health insurance policies. HMOs are limited, as I said before, but they're there, and the authorizations normally would come from the medical groups. Now, when I was there, a long time ago, there used to be a few medical groups, very few, that would have a full cap, meaning they would get enough funding from the healthcare company to pay for professional and authorized services. And they would pay for the professional services and hopefully the facility because they'll be getting enough money coming into their accounts to do such a thing. Simple X-ray or CAT scan would work, but if we're talking of catastrophic, then you had to refer over to the healthcare industry for that one. You had to deal with your own company that you're contracted with. And it's through the utilization review department that they would have to look at all claims, and including the medical records to see whether or not, yeah, some of them were actually being counters anyway. I'm not sure who and which, but that's the scuttlebutt going throughout the company anyway. They wanted to save the company and the stockholders money. But some of them actually needed to authorize a lot of services because they were catastrophic. And they got sued plenty of times. Of course, they went after people with the fraud if they were trying to do that kind of scam. And there was a few of them I saw coming through the system that way. And it was crazy. I would know these things because I had taken classes in medical terminology and then medical billing and coding. So it got me into a company, being a call center and then working with the customers, which would be the doctors and hospitals and billers. I would deal on a constant basis, not the members though. How does this work with the CEO shooting? I'm trying to build a basis on this one here. When you have something of a catastrophic nature, there would have to be long-term goals on this one. Okay. Mr. Farron, I present to you that you just fell down and busted your elbow hard. To which you didn't do any cracking, you did a severe breakage somehow. Now you've got a bone sticking up out of here and sticking up out of here. What are you going to do? Scream in pain. That's a good one right there. Good scream in pain. Of course you would have to. It hurts. What do? Call 911. Ambulance comes over, stabilizes you, monitors your health as you go to the emergency room. Now you got to go in there and see whether or not you're actually going to be in the emergency room long enough to be checked out or just stay there overnight. And I mean, maybe not even looked at just yet. If the place was jam-packed with a lot of people, well, you're in trouble now, aren't you? But let's just say if it's a theoretical quiet night, then you're probably getting some attention at this point. Maybe, if you're lucky enough. Depending on which particular hospital you get into. If they're very good, well, they get you in and out. Maybe. Maybe it'll stabilize the arm enough, saying, well, you just come back over here and we'll do the surgery on you. Or keep you overnight. Now, granted, guys, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a guru. I'm not a lettered academic of any sort. I've only had experiences regarding medical insurance claims. So when I see a procedure code and I see a diagnosis codes and I see facility charges, I'm looking at them on my screen and I'm trying to see if they all match up to what the biller is trying to get. Let's just say that you've already been in and out, you already had surgery, It cost you maybe about 150,000. Guessing. Prices do go up throughout the decades. Professional services that would show on there. I would get indications whether or not if the claim had been authorized or not. If it was an emergency admit, they'd still get a utilization review. But at least you're in there under emergency, and then according to your insurance policy, let's say if you had one, was it an HMO or PPO? Was it in area or out of area? Ah, you said it was at your home, so it's in area. Okay. And how far away are you, and what kind of plan? You didn't get a P. You didn't get the HMO. Okay, fine, be that way. So you got a PPO. This becomes more and more complicated. Maybe you do got a health savings account. So now they got to drain your money dry at this point, especially when you start getting the claim bills. And if the account holds steady, maybe you're fine. But if not, you got to pay for it. Under PPOs, they got certain levels, if you noticed. High deductible, lifetime max, and what's the percentage that you got to, what's the amount cap that you got to reach until you get to pay a certain percentage? And were the doctors and hospitals considered in network or not? I'll leave you to think about that one. Oh, well, I'm setting up the scenario. Well, I don't know. You tell me. If you got a PPO with a company, then according to your company policies, they're going to be telling you what your coverage is. If you're a PPO, you're going to have your lifetime max. Hopefully, you don't max it out. But if you do, you have to pick up another policy. Not that easy, especially when you got a coordination of care going on. Said before, I've been out of the game for a hell of a long while, 20 years. So a lot of things, or more than that, changed a lot. I got out of my blue company back in '06. I started with them back in '99. But I was a temp starting about '98 through '99. And they hired me full time. So we had a blue out here in California. And I got in there just after they changed from nonprofit to profit. Changed it to WellPoint. I just revealed the name of the company. Oh, yeah. There's still Shield out here. We just haven't seen the commercials as much, but we still have a Shield out here. Unless they already moved the thing out of California, so now we're screwed on that one. At least out of the LA market. But let's just say, if I'm going to be going through the PPO stuff at this point, there's going to be a lot of variances on this one. If it's just a standard HMO, dude, it would have been up to the medical group and the health plan to argue it out, who's going to be paying for what and what the patient's responsibility and liability is. HMOs are straightforward. PPOs are a complicated mess. Now, we're getting into a complicated situation here concerning about your claim. Something wrong with your claim, Mr. Farron, because somehow a dragon came by to screw it up one way or another. We pick on the poor John here. Oh, Mr. Larandella, shall we pick on you? I mean, seriously, can we pick on you? I'm sorry, forgive me. Ladarola. Ladarola. That is hopefully the correct pronunciation for you. Okay, Mr. Ladarola, what did you do to him? What did you do to him? How did you cause the accident with him, with Mr. Farron? So before, I'm not a lettered academic, but if I happen to look at a claim, I'm going to be looking at it thoroughly here. I'm looking at the medical damages at this point over here, not who's at fault. That's for the legal departments, and that's for the other insurance companies that might come in handy at this point. But I'm only concerned about Mr. Farron's medical condition with that supposed broken arm of his. Of course, we're not going to concern about any fraud at this point. We're looking at the medical damages here. Okay, so you are going to be happy enough to what? Fill out the blanks? Fill out the claim forms for him? See, the medical review will be looking at the damn thing, theoretically, with a fine-tooth comb. At least a long time ago they were supposed to. And see whether or not if there was actually medical damages or not. Now let me just throw a wild thing on this particular claim of yours. Mr. Farron, you did not get a broken arm. Somehow the procedure codes filed by someone said that you had x-rays done for dental. Claude, this is where the fraud claims come in handy. Because now you're picking someone, a bone doctor, to do something about dental, or a dental doctor filing the wrong claim forms to get paid. But that's a different thing we're not going to deal with here, is it? No, we got to deal with medical necessity. Okay. That's the easier thing to deal with because I hate those fraud claims. They're so damn conflicting, convoluting. It drove our frauds department nuts with a lot of them when I was working over there. See, you got complications to your broken arm there, Farron. You started developing an ongoing sepsis. You got inflammation, infection, something's going on with your bloodstream, and you've got more health problems. It should have been just a simple repair job and keeping you in a cast or immobilized for a long while while you recovered. But something happened. Because now you developed something that you were open season for. Now here comes the complications at this point over here. What did I hear about your company here? You're switching insurance policies? Oh, it gets even worse. Coordination of benefits right there. That's even a nightmare. Who gets the primary authorization? Who gets to deal with those claims? And was the plan actually going to be covering something of a catastrophic nature? Oh, boy. But were these some of the claims that were getting rejected by United Healthcare? Or was it just a simple, maybe it was a heart attack, and they thought it was just gastritis and just moved on from it? If it was AI generated, I don't think AIs would understand, except they're going by zeros and ones. If we're dealing with human beings, then we are dealing with the actual complication. The zeros and ones can only go by what they're programmed for. But it's only the humans programming into things in the first place for this one, isn't it? So when it comes to the shooting of the CEO, this guy had to have a burr up his ass. Something had to happen in his past to do this shit. Had to have. Because I'm not a claims processor. I should have been in claims processing. I should have moved to that particular department and dealt with the processing. At least back then I actually had a general understanding of what I was looking at. These days I got to be retrained all over again on concerning about which procedure codes, which code books we use, and which version of it. They've been changing and upgrading so much, I don't even know what's the current standard book for it. But they got the codes out there anyway. Outdated, but they got the procedure codes out there. They even have mental health books out there. Were some of those claims getting denied? I wondered. It would have been fascinating to see all those rejected claims, to see what the diagnoses were compared to what they were billing for and why they got rejected, There should have been a ton of claim reviews on these things, and why were the reviews getting rejected left and right? And what lawsuits were able to be generated? Were they class actions or individuals? That would also give you an indication of what you were looking at here, giving us indications of what type of personality we're dealing with here. If this guy who did the shooting on that CEO, it'd be fascinating to find out what his major malfunction was. Was it for money? Paid the hire CEO for what reason? Or maybe it wasn't. A deranged guy, sick and fed up with the system that he's got, or got rejected. Maybe he was a caregiver and going against someone else, fighting for someone who was probably dying. That's a good motivation right there, isn't it? Hell, if I actually had been in his shoes, I would have been pushed over to an edge and in doing things uncharacteristic. This was totally uncharacteristic, but plausible. If it was personal, if he wanted to send a message to the CEO of the claims being rejected, maybe he tried to go up the chain of command and couldn't do it, so get his message across to the CEO by taking him out. If we are talking seriously, serious personal stuff happening that made him got into that situation there. He chose this out of anger. He waited. He stalked. He got information somehow. I kept thinking this had to be inside, not a patient. Unless the patient was somehow related to the people inside the company. And that even with the company benefits, they weren't getting the help necessary. Theory only. Because how else do you stalk a CEO and wait for him? And how do you recognize him as a CEO? You already stalked him. You already targeted this guy. What was the reason? If it was personal, it had to be stuck in the claims. There had to be a claim affecting this guy one way or another. Either by somebody he knew, or somebody died on him, or he tried to get help and he died. Grief and pain is a hell of a motivation right there if we're talking about a patient or someone related to the patient is going to be taking revenge. But how did he get the schedule? How to be inside. That's the only way I can think about it. I can think about millions of ways of patients being pissed off at a company. And if you can't get to the middle management, you go to the top, right? You do your research and you find out what their email address is, their corporate email address. And of course, they're going to be investigated by their own security department and their own executive staff. It won't reach the CEO unless it's an actual threat. There had to have been a motivation in there somewhere. There had to have been. If I actually had a claim, or I'm going to use those two as my example. My mama and my brother, both Kaiser, a long time ago. Mama passed away back in 2013, David back in 2018, but they both were Kaiser. So let me drag Kaiser into this. They're going to love this one. My brother had passed away suddenly. The day before he got discharged for blood sugar balances out of whack. And they stabilized him, kept him overnight. He picked up an infection, but they didn't put it into the charts because he had a temperature raise. He was also suffering through mental. He was suffering through transischemic attacks, portions in his brain that were damaged. So, communication skills and ability to move sometimes was affected, taking care of himself. I'm his little younger brother, 24/7 caregiving. What the hell? It's my job. But the next day, a few hours after he got discharged and he's at home, we had to call 911 because he wasn't breathing. He claimed he was having a hard time breathing. He was trying to laugh and try to say jokes to the EMT as they were putting him on a gurney and getting him out of here and taking him over to the hospital. Next thing I know is I'm saying goodbye to a corpse. If I actually had more than what I could dig out, could I make a legal argument against Kaiser? Kaiser's inclusive. They are not like the Blues or any other private health insurance company. So I'm going to switch them over to an insurance company instead of Kaiser. Okay, so now my brother actually had a different insurance company and not Kaiser. They would probably look at his records to see whether or not he was going to be covered for the bills. Because probably in 30 days after his passage, I would probably get the bills coming from both medical staff and facility telling me that I am responsible. Now, how am I responsible for his death? I'm not even on it. But I'm his caregiver. I don't have official power of attorney. But they would go after me anyway. Why? Because I'm the guy taking care of them. And I would have to look at the claim. I would have to look at the letter to see what they were talking about. I would have to see the procedure codes that they were talking about. I would know if they were screwing me over. But what happens if I didn't have that knowledge there, guys? What happens if I didn't have the medical billing and trading on this one? Just as clueless as everybody else when they look at the numbers and look at the diagnosis and everything else. They would have to Google this stuff. And they would still not understand it half the time anyway. But for me, since I've already been doing the billing claims research, I would have an inkling of what the hell happened. I would have to see what the medical group or the health plan would have done to see why the claim was rejected. And was it appealable? And if it was appealed, why was the appeal denied? And if the appeal was denied, then there's a lawsuit for that. But what happens somewhere in a lawsuit it didn't go out? If it was a class action, there would be a court record on it. Even an individual would have been a court record. It's public. Something about those claims would have been triggering people to the point where saying, I'm not getting anywhere with these things and it's all the medical insurance fault. They did everything they could to block this damn thing. Was it the fault of the health plan? Or was it the fault of the caregiver or the patient? Would they be doing that kind of argument in the court? Would that been the one pissing off the guy enough to do some stuff? See, my head's going through the scenarios at this point on the situation. I'm trying to get into the guy's mind, why he did what he did. I'm trying to understand the caregiver point of view. I'm trying to understand the patient's point of view. I'm trying to understand the outsider's point of view regarding the situation. There's a lot more to the story than what they're telling. Because they're still trying to open up the whole damn thing. The shooting happened, 1 or 2 days ago? From the time of this video? And yeah, they're doing a massive manhunt, but they're going to be taking hours on this guy to see what the hell's going on. And it'll take us a little bit longer just to get more of the story. It'll take us weeks. There'll be a lot of research that they'll be doing on this one. FBI is going to be doing a thorough examination on this one. They'll be going through the company. They'll be going through the company records on this one. They'll be taking illegal eagles to go through this thing. Even illegal eagles would have to know about procedure codes, wouldn't they? Facility charges? All the pilling? Is it relatable? Is it not relatable? Were there any court cases with it? Or is there not court cases? Was this an individual? Or was this a cumulative? I want to know what the hell was going on in this guy's mind. Not the CEO, the shooter. See his motivation, what was going on through him. Because there has to be a story in there somewhere. There has to be. It made me concerned about my own family. Ma's been dead over 10 and some change. Dave, September 8th. On the 18th. And to me, it was somewhat suspicious, but his medical conditions were just changing too rapidly on him. He hit 60. He started getting the transischemic attacks in his head. But he already has several factors going against him anyway. And then he just died. Called it respiratory failure. But it was respiratory failure. He couldn't catch his breath. Something got into his system, screwed up his pulmonary system, and then something nasty probably got into his heart and gone. And since they're all ashes right now, there's nothing to test. It would have been something to see the medical records, but I'm not going to contest it. Would I like to know? Maybe. But I already know that one more thing that they didn't count on. I know my brother had a fight to live, but when he got crippled bad. He valued his source of communication. He valued him being alive and resilient and showing people he still had strength for an old fart of 60. He could still try to kick someone's ass because he had military training. He had psychological things going on inside of him, the training. A lot of things that would have given him that. But The thing I deal with on my channel, A Diary of a Griever, named John Weaver. A lot more to the story about my brother. Losing Ma was one of the hardest damn things that hit him. He was first born, 8 years older than I am. It was his will that took him out, not the body. He was tired. He wanted to go home, leaving me to clean up the mess, try to create a new one. And yeah, for a guy being me emotionally screwed up right now as it is, I probably would go after people left and right. But the problem is, I learned to accept a few things and still gripe and grumble about a lot of them because I can't change them. I'm not going to gripe and grumble like Kaiser didn't do everything. I was seeing my brother not doing everything and choosing not to. He was living life on his own terms. That's one thing. But that guy, that shooter, no. Must have been burning his ass. Must have been burning his ass on this one, guys. I know I'm talking way too much. And this is going to be posted on my channel as public, so what the hell? People are going to watch it anyway. If you guys want to be bored to death, come over to my channel and be bored to death. Anyway, I got to deal with a dog that seems to be demanding my attention. I'm dealing as another caregiving duty of mine, taking care of an old dog who's been driving me crazy for a long time. And she demands. She is she who must be obeyed. We know some people like that, don't we? Anyway.